Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I'm going to be reviewing Under Falling Skies, but I'm going to be doing it with a friend, with David Thompson. How you doing, David?
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I've never done a co-review like this on the channel before, but we were just talking about how we were both playing the game. We decided to do it together. So let's have an overview of Under Falling Skies, and we'll come back for some final thoughts. All right, so here's Under Falling Skies all laid out. As you can see, it's super awkward to film because it's this like vertical board. So it's taking up all of my table, but only like this little sliver of it. But we're going to do a quick overview. So Under Falling Skies is kind of like Space Invaders, the board game. And basically what's happening is that we've got these alien ships who are on a mothership that's going to descend throughout the game. And this side has the rules on it, which is super convenient. But the alien ships are going to come down. The mothership is going to descend. And our goal is to research these aliens and figure out what we need to do about them by hitting the top of our research track before one of two things happens. So either the ships will keep damaging us and our base will hit complete destruction. Basically, we'll take so much damage that the game is over. Or the mothership will get so low that it basically destroys our city anyway. And so that's the other lose condition for the game. So we want to max out our research track before the mothership gets low enough or before we take too much damage. And this setup has the basic Roswell setup, but there are a couple of other cities. So you've got Washington, D.C., we've got New York, and there's also an additional tile. So you can basically have slightly different setups. So basically what happens in this game is there are three phases. The first phase is called the dice phase, and that is where you take and roll these 5 dice. And you're going to allocate them to different columns and different rooms within our little subterranean base. So basically you would allocate one of these dice to each column, and each room that you allocate a die to does different things. So for example, these rooms up here at the top, they basically are just anti-aircraft. They don't do anything except they decrease the amount of movement for alien ships for dice you put there, which I'm going to show you in a moment. This room is basically firing on enemy ships, so we can put a die here to attack potential bad guys that are coming down. This is a room that is going to let us do some research, and so we would be moving up, the research track according to the value of the die we put there. And then this room, which you have to put 2 dice in to get anything from it, is the power room. So you basically need to spend power to do your various actions. So in order to get that power, you have to put dice in the power room. Additionally, you have this little excavator here, and you can put 1 die each turn ahead of where the excavator actually is. And what that's going to do is allow you to move the excavator down to reveal more rooms, which you're really going to need in order to get the die totals that you actually need to finish your research. As you can see, this total up here is 11. You're going to need these multi-dice research rooms to make that work. So basically, we've rolled all of our dice, and we can just place them, and I'll show you how it works. So these gray dice are a little bit different from the white dice, and I'm going to show you exactly how. So let's say that we want to put this gray die, this gray 4 right here in the attack room. What that's going to do is we put 4 pips here, and that means that this alien ship is going to move down 4 spaces, which in this case I actually wanted it to do because it's landed in a space that I can shoot. So as the aliens come down, they are potentially going to damage us, but also they're going to do different things depending on where they land, and part of the puzzle of the game is allocating your dice in a way that helps you. It also moves the ships in the way you want. So this guy moved down 4 because I put a 4 die here. Let's say that I want to do a little bit of research, so I'll put this gray die here for 3, and this guy will come down 1, 2, 3. Let's say that I would like to place this 4, and then I'm going to put it here. So then this alien will come down 1, 2, 3, 4. And then now that I've placed a white die, I have to re-roll the dice that I haven't placed yet. So the white dice kind of give you a re-roll, or you have to save them until the end. So now I have a 6 and a 2. So 6s are good and bad at the same time. All right, so let's say that what I want to do is put the 6 right here because I want to, get a bunch of power, maybe too much power actually. But we're going to bring this spaceship down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he's getting closer. And then I'll just put the 2 here, and the excavator can move over to it. 1, 2. And then in my landing here, on that arrow, my alien ship will go over 1 in that direction. So depending on where they land, alien ships can make the mothership descend faster. They can move to the left or right, or they can put themselves on a space where they're vulnerable to being shot by me when I use an attack space. These dice are robots that you can play with, and basically you can set them in a room where they're automatically going to do some work. So once I've placed my dice and I've brought my ships down, then I can actually resolve what I've done with the dice that I allocated. So this space has a -1, so this is worth a 4 for enemy movement, but it's only worth a 3 for shooting. However, it's still going to be enough because this space has a 2 right here, and it's got a little explosion, so I can kill this alien with that die. Nobody else is on a place where I can hit them, so that's all I'm going to be able to do with that room for that turn. And that's going to cost me a power. So you can see the cost right here on the bottom. And then here we have this power room. So I've actually got 10 in here, -3. So it's going to take me to 7. So basically I'm just going to max out my energy, which is something that is a good thing to do. Then I can spend 2 of that power to do science. So this 3 will take me up here, 1 on the science track. So basically the sum of your dice has to be able to take you up to the number value of the next space. If I had 4, I could do 3 and then 4. But I just put a 3 there. And then I can move my little excavator forward here, which is also going to cost me another power. But it also opened up another research room and it has just got my excavator moving in one way or another. So I did my rooms phase. Then I'm going to do the mothership phase. And so basically with the mothership, I'm going to bring it down by 1. I have to take the consequence that's here, which means I'm going to spawn one of these clear ships in addition to this purple ship that I knocked off the board earlier. And then once I've taken my little consequence, so this one is spawn a clear ship, this one is move my excavator backwards so this thing can undo my progress, and this one is undo my research progress. So once I've taken that consequence, I get to respawn. So basically I'll spawn this one first and this empty column, and then this clear ship will appear here in this other empty column. And that's a full turn. I'm going to take my dice off and get ready to roll again and play some more. So basically the game is very simple, but the difficulty is in all of the choices because you need to do the right things with your dice down here while also paying attention to the consequences they have in the sky. So that's the base game. There is also a campaign for Under Falling Skies. So you can either play standalone games, or there's a bit of a campaign that you can play that has a comic book and some characters with special powers and other stuff that you can add in to spice the game up even further, and then you can mix and match those components after you've completed the campaign. So now that I've given you the quickest overview possible, let's go ahead and have some final thoughts. So now for some final thoughts. David, so tell us about your experience of playing this game, because I know that you got really into it because you're playing with your kids.
Yeah. So what happened with me is I'm on this quest right now to play all of the most popular, no kidding, solo games, like solitaire games. So games that are specifically designed only for one person, right? And so I played quite a few of them, but somehow, some way, I had never played Under Falling Skies. For people that are familiar with Capstone Games, the publisher, they just opened up their first retail store in the Cincinnati area. Amazing store, highly recommend it. And I was there for their grand opening and I saw it on the shelf and I was like, okay, this is the no kidding, the most popular solitaire game, period, according to Board Game Geek. So I need to play this, right? But the secret about me is I don't actually play many solitaire games, right? Solo, actually
How
solo.
dare you?
I know. Yet we're still friends, and you'll occasionally have me on.
Well, also you design solo games, David.
I love testing them. I love designing them, but playing them by myself, I don't love it. So that's not true. Okay, so what my experience is typically, I'll get the game out, a solo game. I'll get it out. I'll set it up. I'll start playing it, and as I'm playing it, I'm more interested in exploring the game than I am necessarily playing the game, right? And so like Under Falling Skies is fantastic, and we'll get into this, this whole concept of input randomness and dice manipulation. Just as soon as you start playing, like, oh, this is amazing, this is really cool. But if I really want to play a solo game to fruition, like if I want to sit down and play the game, the trick I do is I bring my kids in, because I love playing solo games co-op with my kids. So usually it's my son who's 8, my daughter who's 11, and the 3 of us, or some combination of us, will sit down and we'll play the game. So we've played Warp's Edge like that. We've played, we played just a lot of solo games. So I knew that they would want to play this with me. And sure enough, we all sat down, we learned it together, we started playing it, and they were both hooked. So so we've had a fantastic time playing what I call, solitaire co-op, basically.
That is so cute. I love it. Yeah, my closest equivalent of that was like sitting next to my mom while she played Wolfenstein as a child. So
That's awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but no, I'm a big believer in alone together. Like Mike Kelly and I have also had a lot to say about that. Maybe we should have more to say about that. But so I do want to ask though, is this actually the most popular solo game? Like I don't actually check numbers. This game has been sitting in my closet since it was recommended when I was talking to a bunch of other solo gamers about best of the year it came out. And I just finally got it out and learned it and played it a bunch of times. So where is that number coming from? Really?
So this, if you go to Board Game Geek and you do an advanced search, you search for one player games and you have to make it exclusively one player. There's an option to say exclusively one. Under Falling Skies is the highest rated game, followed by Friday, and then Warp's Edge, Coffee Roaster, Maquis, etc. Right? So no kidding. When you list those, when you hear Under Falling Skies, Friday, Warp's Edge, these are all fantastic games, right?
Yes.
For any solo player. Like this is like the Hall of Fame for solo games, right?
But what's really interesting about that is so the People's Choice Top 200 voting is underway right now. And I'm actually going to be filming commentary about that next weekend with Paul Grogan, Mike Kelly, and Jeremy Howard. And I already know the list is not going to look like that. Like these games will be on the list somewhere,
Yep.
maybe.
Yep.
Maybe Fridays will be the top 200. Like I'm not even sure where Friday is in the list anymore. But when I think of top solo games, I'm thinking the People's Choice list, and it's quite different.
Yeah. So I mean, you can run the same search by going through it and just saying one player, but don't limit it to exclusive, and then the list is completely different. But it's an interesting, and this we're tangenting big time here. But I had asked you recently, you and Michael Kelly, what are y'all's thoughts on the difference between a game that is designed solo versus a game that can be played solo, right? And I mean, I don't mean tacked on solo. I mean games that actually put some time and effort to making a solo system. And do you view those differently? And I think to what's your point when you ask the solo community to vote on your favorites, and the game, let's say the top 10 solo games, none of those might be actual solo unique games. Clearly, there's a difference, but not meaningful in terms of like people's perception of what the best solo experience is, right?
Yeah, although I do like a catered solo game. So let's come back to that. Actually, that's a good segue into talking about the game, right? So Under Falling Skies is a solo specific experience. So yeah, you can play it like by making decisions to co-op together with other people, but it's really a game that's designed for a solo player. And I actually really do appreciate that. Like I like a good, just pure one player game that's not trying to be everything to everybody. And I thought that this one was nice. It's nice. And like we'll kind of get back to talking about that. Like I enjoyed the puzzle of it. I enjoyed the dice allocation. The board is very long. But like, that's not really a problem. I have a whole table for gaming. It was a pain to film. But it's basically like a tabletop version of, I guess, Space Invaders or something.
Yeah.
And so how did that feel for you as somebody who loves like war and historical games? And then how'd your kids respond?
Well, so for sure, it's funny you should say it looks like Space Invaders, because clearly I guess that's exactly what they were going for, because both of my kids, who did not grow up with Space Invaders, obviously, but have known it through its cultural whatever phenomena, immediately said the same thing. They're like, oh, that's like that video game where the things are coming down. And what's funny about that is like, if you were going to make a Space Invaders game, you would think it was like super light and not like just kind of like whatever, right? And that is not this game, right? So yeah, you might think it looks like Space Invaders, some light little experience, but no, this is stinky. And so I guess the good thing about my kids is they've played so many different games that they don't have a lot of like gameplay expectations. So when we taught the teach, they immediately both grokked it. And the other thing about playing this sort of solo co-op way we play, I guess you could have some like quarterbacking issues, right? Like if I was a dominant personality or whatever. But the cool thing about doing it that way, where I make a conscious effort to not do that, to not guide them, and we really collaborate, is when you have a game like Under Falling Skies, where the decision tree is huge, right? You can make all sorts of different decisions that all have massive ramifications on the other things that happen. Deferring to the judgment of a different person can make you explore the game in a way you wouldn't otherwise, because you get into play patterns by yourself, right?
Yes, I definitely have favorite things to do. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so, I mean, will you've already given an overview. So let's say that you, as a player, you to a fault love to try to destroy the ships as they're coming in, right? Like that's what you always prioritize over everything else. If you have my kids, and my kids are like, no, we have to research, and I just defer to them on that decision. The game, you actually experience the game in a different way, and it'll help you appreciate the game more, probably, right?
Yeah, like I definitely, so research is important, kids. But I'm definitely focused on excavating and destroying in the early part of the game. And it sounds
Yeah.
like your kids like to make sure there's like a good research bank going before you get to those lower rooms.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, it's funny you should mention excavating, because I'm like, let's excavate, and they're like, no, we want to do these other things. I'm like, come on, we've got to.
But if we don't excavate, we can't win.
I know.
And I like the way that you're talking about the game as having kind of a complex decision tree, because, okay, so it's not a hard game. It's not a heavy game. It's not a difficult to learn game, but you're right. Like there are a lot of decisions to make in Under Falling Skies. And I think that that's really where the charm is for this particular game. That it just really gives you a lot to do with very little, like 5 dice and like a robot.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's a lot to be said for a game that lets you do so much with so little.
Yeah. I mean, it is definitely a puzzle, and is it solvable? You can debate, et cetera, et cetera. But at least, even if you were on the side of, oh, it's a puzzle and you can solve, quote unquote, solve the game, well, holy cow, there's a lot of different ways to approach that, right?
Yeah. So this kind of takes me where, so I think we're in agreement. Like this is a very good game. I definitely recommend it for solo players. But I guess this kind of leads to the discussion of like, is it a keeper? So for me, like I'm partway into my first campaign. I think what I'm probably going to do is finish the campaign, maybe play it one more time, let it sit on my shelf for a little bit, kind of see how I feel. But I've really enjoyed my time with this game, and I'm still enjoying it. I'm not convinced it's still going to be on my shelf in a year, and even less odds in 2. So like, where are you with that? Is Under Falling Skies a keeper? Like, is it one for the ages, or is it one that you kind of play out and then you move on? Where are you with that?
Yeah. So I think you and I are pretty much lockstep. So for solo gamers, highly recommended. I think you're going to have a fantastic time with this game, right? I think it's a really good experience. I think that you're going to get your value for your money for sure. You're going to play through the campaign once at least, maybe twice, and then you're going to pass it on to somebody else. But for the cost of the game and the value, the play that you're getting out of it, like, I definitely highly recommend it. It's not, I think once you've played it a couple of times, once or twice through the campaign, you're probably not going to come back to it. But I mean, you've gotten so many plays at that point, right? That so maybe it doesn't stay in your collection, but not but for good reason, right?
Yeah, because you played it out. Like,
Right.
I'm definitely still in the kind of heat of having a bunch of initial plays, but I can feel my, like, how you start playing something and you're just super hot on it, you just can't quit, and you like play and play and play and play, and then that starts to slow down.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of entering the slowdown period, which is why I like to play things a bunch of times before I review them. And so, yeah, I feel like this is a game that I'm gonna get my money's worth out of it. Like, I bought my copy. This is not a review copy. You can usually assume something's a review copy. It doesn't actually bought. I think I'm gonna get my money's worth out of it. I've certainly spent a lot more on something that I spent a lot less time with, right?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
But yeah, like, is it my number one solo game of all time? I mean, no, but nobody's beaten Mage Knight in all these years, so whatever. What are you gonna do with that? Yeah, I really feel like this is just I also think that there's something to be said, right, for a game that you just have a really good time with, and then you give it to somebody else knowing that they are also going to have a really good time with it.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
So you are a game designer, a prolific one. We are designing a game together right now. How has that affected the way that you're looking at all these solo games? And what did you learn from Under Falling Skies that was interesting? Since we're here, we can talk about it.
There's one big takeaway about Under Falling Skies from a game design perspective. Now, I will say that people often ask me, like, when you're playing a game, Do you want to redesign it or whatever? And the answer to that is no, right? So I'm never like, oh, I'm going to house rule this, or I'm going to redesign this. Now I'll absolutely be inspired by games, but not in a way that like I want to change that game. It's just for myself for later on. The interesting thing about Under Falling Skies is because of the way at the beginning of that, people have already watched, you've already talked about how it plays. So you roll the dice and then you figure out what you're going to do with the puzzle. Jeff Engelstein in Ludology podcast has talked multiple times about this concept of input randomness and output randomness. And the simplest explanation is input randomness, a thing happens. So in this case, you roll some dice and then you make your decisions, right? Dice manipulation, versus output randomness, where you make a decision about what I want to do. And then your success or failure hinges on you rolling a die or drawing a card or whatever. So those are the two oversimplification, but that's the difference. Under Falling Skies, the tension of this game like just climbs, right? Are you going to lose, et cetera, et cetera. But in the very last turn of the game, because of the puzzly nature of the game, you roll the dice, you figure out the puzzle, and then if you're going to win or lose in that last turn as you're resolving that last turn. So what you have in this game is this massive tension that comes crashing down at the very last second as you mechanically step through winning a game or potentially losing the game. And this is not me trying to fix Under Falling Skies. That's not the point of the discussion. It's more of an interesting design, like philosophical game design discussion about if you're designing an input randomness game like this that has this puzzly nature, do you just accept that there's that last little bit of experience? Because as humans, psychologically, the last thing we feel when we're experiencing something is the thing that sticks with us, right?
Yes.
So that's the one takeaway from Under Falling Skies as I was playing it, that other than just enjoying the experience with my kids and stuff, that from a design perspective, that's the one thing that stuck with me as I was playing it.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. Like in real life, in this situation, it'd be a great relief to be like, yeah, we're going to finish this research in time. I can see it. I know that we're there, but right. In a game, it doesn't actually, I don't think I've ever had an epic final turn really in this game. Right. Because it's always been, I did enough research that I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to make it, or I screwed up and I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it out. Right.
I mean, the closest thing that could happen would be you're allocating your dice and you place like a white die at the very end to re-roll a gray die where you need to do something, but you've just now shifted it to be an output randomness game, right? So you've just kind of you've shifted that entire stand-up dice roll possibility to the last second, and then it's just I would say that doesn't reflect the puzzly nature of the rest of the game. But again, this is not really a criticism. I mean, the game is clearly fantastic. It's not a desire to shift the design of the game. It's more just an interesting thing that the game has to deal with by the nature of the game.
Yeah, it's kind of an observation about how the play experience feels, which is largely very good. But then it's almost like the last couple turns are less thrilling than the setup and kind of the mid game almost.
Right.
Yeah, which is that's an interesting. I normally think about games that have a dramatic ending, but this one really kind of front loads.
Yeah, or at least in that last turn, it as you said, you can kind of know if you're going to win or lose, right?
Yeah, and in real life, you would want that. So. So David, I've never actually like co-reviewed like this on this channel. This is super fun, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks for having me. Definitely just enjoy chatting with you all the time. So the opportunity to actually chat about something we just happen to both be playing at the same time was really cool.
Yeah, so those of you who are out there, please comment, let us know if we should maybe do this again. And by all means, like, subscribe, comments, support me on Patreon. And most of all, happy gaming. Thanks so much for coming on, David.
Thanks.